All right, thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it very much, and it's always a really exciting thing to sit in the back of the room and hear you all laugh and laugh when Adolf is talking his smack, and then maybe gasp a little bit when he doesn't make the pole vault, and cheer, when the Tigerettes win gold, or maybe not, or hiss even. I think there are a few people maybe that weren't Tigerettes fans. But like I said before we showed the film, we wanted to set out to make a movie about people, not about sports. And we wanted to tell a story that was more universal than competition, but really more about the human spirit and attitudes and being engaged in life and really and the goals. I mean, I think that when you watch the movie, at least when I watch the movie, even still today, it's amazing to me to hear Bradford talk about his goal, that he's going to push through chemotherapy, he's going to push through the pain of going through cancer, and his goal is to go to the Olympics. And I find that just so inspiring. So thanks so much for sharing the film with us today. And what I wanted to do now is give you an update on all the characters. So, one question, with the show of hands, who here was rooting against the Tigerettes by the end of the movie? Wow, so we had a lot of Tigerettes fans here. Usually it's like 50-50. People are rooting for the Smoky Mountain Mamas and rooting against the Tigerettes. Okay. Wow, got a tough crowd. I don't want to play pickup basketball with any of you. So, an update with the Tigerettes. It's really actually what's really exciting is that the Senior Games takes place every 2 years. So we filmed in 2009 at the games, the national competition, which took place in California at Stanford University, and then in 2011 they took place in Houston. And what's great is the 2013 games just wrapped up. So I actually have two really exciting updates for you, because the Tigerettes always leave you on the edge of your seat. So. 2009, you just saw the Tigerettes win their 6th gold medal. And then in 2011 in Houston, they were defending their title and going for the 7th consecutive gold medal. And as I mentioned, it's every 2 years. So they were national champions going into Houston for 14 years. And so they have a big target on their back, like Nikki says. Everybody wants to beat them. And you can never really predict who is going to be the team playing the Tigerettes in the finals. You can guess that the Tigerettes will be in the finals, but you're not sure if it's going to be the Great Lakes Classics or the Arkansas Silverbacks or the or Razorbacks, I'm sorry, and then the Smoky Mountain Mamas, or there's a bunch of other teams that are always gunning for them. And so in 2011 in Houston, what's really interesting is that it was actually a rematch. It was the Tigerettes versus the Smoky Mountain Mamas again. And what made it more interesting is that the Smoky Mountain Mamas had vowed revenge after this game. The captain of the team, Susie, her shoulder was dislocated, and she did make a full recovery, but it was very painful, as you could see, and that cost them the game. I don't know if it was completely clear in the movie, but they were ahead by quite a bit. The Smoky Mountain Mamas were going to win. And there were just a few seconds left on the clock when Susie's shoulder was dislocated, and there was a foul issue. And then actually, the way the game works is it's 3-on-3 half-court basketball. The Smoky Mountain Mamas made a foul, and there were 2 Smoky Mountain Mamas versus 3 Tigerettes, and the Tigerettes scored like 6 points unanswered and ended up winning. So back to Houston in the rematch. Through all the tournaments, the best 2 teams were the Smoky Mountain Mamas and the Tigerettes. In the final game, in the championship game, it came down to the wire. The Tigerettes hit a game-tying shot to put the game into overtime. So in overtime, they were playing head-to-head, and the Tigerettes were up by 1 point. There are no 3-pointers. There's just 2-pointers in this game, in the rules. So Tigerettes are up by 1 point. They'd made a foul shot, and the Smoky Mountain Mamas have the ball with 3 seconds left on the clock at the end of overtime. And so Susie has the ball. She's an excellent shooter. She's the one whose shoulder was dislocated. She's got the ball. They're down by 1. 3 seconds left. She shoots the ball, and at the buzzer makes the basket. It's a 2-pointer. The Tigerettes lose by 1. I know a lot of you are disappointed in the crowd. So you'd be happy to hear the whistles were blown. the referees conferred, and they decided that Susie released the ball after the buzzer. So the basket was taken back, and the Tigerettes won their 7th straight gold medal. Who here is still a Tigerettes fan? So, and if you didn't, in this, I'll tell you, the 2013 games in Cleveland was more exciting. It came down to the same 2 teams again. The twist is the 3rd team that we followed in the film, the Great Lakes Classics from Michigan. They had that woman, Sherry, who had the curly hair, who said that they play a muscle game. So she decided to leave her team because she wanted to win gold, and she was tired of the Great Lakes Classic, coming in at a distant 4th or 5th place. So she contacted the Tigerettes, contacted Mavis, the captain of the Tigerettes, and said, "I'd like to join your team." Because the rules had changed last year, and they allowed for 1 out-of-state competitor on your team. So she asked to join the team, and Mavis said no. But Susie from the Smoky Mountain Mamas said yes. And they created this dream team with the Smoky Mountain Mamas plus Sherry from the Great Lakes Classics. And they and sure enough, in Cleveland at this year's Senior Olympics, just this last July, it was the Tigerettes and the Smoky Mountain Mamas, this time with Sherry, and they won. A resounding defeat, actually. It was really surprising. So, what's funny about that is, the Tigerettes and the Smoky Mountain Mamas, they don't like each other. They're not sending each other Christmas cards. They're not wishing each other a happy birthday. But what I find that's really amazing about the relationship and the dynamic between the Smoky Mountain Mamas and the Tigerettes and a lot of their competitors is that they're each other's biggest motivators. They are the ones who set each other's goals. The Tigerettes to defend their gold, to retake gold in 2015, the Smoky Mountain Mamas to become national champions. And they achieved their goal this year. And I think that, I find it so inspiring. I've talked to Mavis about this, and Mavis says, when I wake up in the weeks before the competition, before a big tournament, I think of my competitors, my fiercest competitors, and they're my biggest motivators. They're the ones that help me push through the arthritis. They're the ones that help me push through the extreme knee pain she has. I don't know if you saw, but she has a knee brace on her left knee, and she actually gets cortisone shots before her competitions. And so she's very dedicated and pushes through a lot to compete. And so I find that interesting that though they don't like each other, they really push each other, and that happens a lot with the senior competition. The other update I want to give you is about John and Brad. Now, you saw in the postscript that Brad had beat cancer, and Bradford, one thing we didn't include in the film was that Bradford went through a very intense recovery process, a month in the ICU. Afterwards, he was at home for about 6 months and basically bedridden. After that, he decided to start joining John back at the pool, not to swim, but to cheer on him, his brother, and his team. He was just feeling like he needed to be around them again. And he decided after a while that he'd get back in the pool after he'd built up more strength and would swim a lap or 2 at first. But by this time, it was about a year after the competition that you just saw, 2010. And John was starting to train for the 2011 Olympics in Houston. And Bradford decided that he wanted to compete as well, that he was feeling strong enough. So he actually entered and qualified for the Houston Senior Olympics. And he ended up winning 2 more gold medals. So not only did he beat cancer, but he went back and beat the surgery and competed again. So this year's competition, Bradford did not compete, but John did compete, and John won as a 94-year-old, soon to be 95. He won 3 more gold medals as well. So the brothers continue to amaze us. And the final update I want to give you is about Roger. Now Roger is, it's a bit of a sad note. Roger did pass away. He was 102, but I felt really lucky because just before he passed away, just a couple months, we did a screening in Tampa because he's a snowbird. He'd spent half the year up in Massachusetts and half the year down in Tampa. And we had a screening in Tampa. It was actually our premiere. The Tigerettes came from Louisiana, and Roger was there. And the last image I have in my head of Roger is him posing for a photo, smiling ear to ear, because he has 3 tigerettes on one side of him and 3 on the other, and all 6 of them are giving him a kiss on the cheek. And he loved the attention. And so the reason I wanted to bring up Roger as well is that he taught us one of the most important lessons in making the movie. And when I say us, I'm talking about myself and my film partner. As I'd mentioned, we were 26 when we started making Age of Champions, and I'll admit, when we began the film, we did bring some preconceived notions, some misconceptions, I'd say, about aging to our project. When we first heard about it, what drew us to it was probably some of those misconceptions, that once you reach a certain age, you're kind of going to be in the rocking chair. And you're certainly not going to be physically active in life, but you're probably not going to be as engaged in life in general. And I'm basing this on basically just a few fleeting sort of interactions with family friends who were much older than me, and I felt we didn't really have a whole lot to talk about. And then, my grandparents, who I was pretty close with, but they lived pretty far away. So we'd see each other for holidays, and it was kind of the same conversation a couple times a year, I felt. And so, I had this idea that the reason this topic was so interesting is it really kind of blew my mind. This idea that there's senior athletes throwing javelins and pole vaulting. I couldn't believe it. But I think it was also from that youthful sort of idea and those misconceptions. So when we got to Cape Cod to do our first shoot with Roger, we were harboring those, both myself and Chris. And I don't know exactly what happened. I can't quite remember. But I think Chris and I may have made a joke, and we were laughing on the side of the tennis court we're filming with Roger. First time we'd met him. And I think Roger saw this, and he came over, and he very politely challenges Chris and I to a doubles match. And he says, "Now, Chris, Keith, I'd like to challenge you, you two, my partner, my doubles partner, Tom, and I would like to challenge you. He's 94, if you were wondering. We'd like to challenge you to a match." And so Chris and I accepted, and we're both pretty fit. We don't play tennis regularly, but we're like, all right, well. So Chris and I we huddle, and we say, all right, let's take it easy on him. He's 100. We don't want to hurt his feelings. We just got here. We got to film them for like 4 days. So we start to play, and you saw him lose, but you saw him playing singles. And there's a lot of real estate to cover in singles. Doubles, he was able to not move quite as much, focus on his strengths. And before Chris and I could change our strategy, they walloped us pretty bad. And it was embarrassing. I mean, it was really embarrassing. And Chris and I, because cumulatively, they had about 130 years on us and in age. And Chris and I, we were upset at each other. I was like, Chris, how could you miss that shot? Like, what's wrong with you? And he'd say the same to me. He's like, what kind of serve is that? You serve like Roger. Just do what he's doing. And so it was embarrassing, but it was humbling. And I think that it was probably one of the most important things that happened to us along the way was having Roger beat us really badly, because it sort of helped us shed those ideas that, oh, well, this is kind of a cute thing where there's this 100-year-old playing tennis. How sweet. He can hit the ball over the net. That's an accomplishment. But then we realized, no, he's an athlete. He's serious about this. This is his goal, to beat us at tennis. And he was serious about it, and he beat us, and it proved to me that, hey, these aren't just seniors. These are athletes. These are people that we need to have a more open mind about, an open heart about. And I think ultimately helped us craft a more honest and more honest film, really honestly. So we set out from Cape Cod to DC, to Texas, to Louisiana, and other places with that changed perspective. And I think that we can thank Roger for opening our minds and our hearts and really coming to the film in a different way that perhaps we would have otherwise. The other thing I want to add to that, though, is it was really annoying. Roger did bring up the win all the time. I mean, in almost every interview, he would talk about how he just beat us really bad. I don't even want to tell you the score. And it got, we said, Roger, we're not putting this in the movie. Just stop mentioning it. But he'd still bring it up. Probably the most hurtful time he did it was in California. We were at the Olympics that we filmed, and there were these 2 young women who were about our age that he was signing autographs for and taking pictures with, and they were really pretty. And Chris and I were filming this, and and Roger's got his arm around both of them. That's like his move. And we're filming this, and he leans into the girls and he says, "Hey ladies, you see these young guys here? Well, I beat them at tennis." Thanks, Roger. Appreciate that. So, you know, it was a wonderful journey to make the film and to meet these characters, and you know, we learned a lot throughout the process. And what's been really exciting too is not just making the movie, but then sharing it. And sharing the film, as Deb had mentioned, we'd had over 1,000 screenings. Actually, at this point, that's actually old. We've had over 1,700 screenings at this point. And very few of them, though, can be like this, where one of us can be here to host the event, to talk about it, and to engage with you in a way and tell you some more of the context that doesn't perhaps come across in a 54-minute movie. So it's really special to be here with people that are dedicated to seniors, to providing services to seniors, and where they live, and the services they need. And then those of you who are perhaps studying it. Some of the most rewarding screenings we've done of the nearly 2,000 have been at universities and at more intergenerational type events like this. And so this is really special, and I'm really looking forward to the Q&A, so I hope you guys have some zingers for me. One other, how are we doing on time, Trina? Oh, good, great. So I can keep talking. I had sort of shortened it. One other update I want to give you is with Adolf and Earl. So Adolf and Earl are in the same age group. And the way the Senior Olympics works is it wouldn't be quite fair if Roger, a 100-year-old, was playing a youngster, as he calls him, a 94-year-old. They're in different age groups. That just so happened there were no other 100-year-olds, so we had to play them. But the way it works is there's 5-year increments. The youngest senior athletes are 50, and their age group is 50 to 54. Then it goes 55 to 59, all the way up to 96 to, or I guess it'd be 95 to 99. And so Adolf and Earl about 18 months apart by birth, and so they were in the same age group in California at the 2009 games. And then in the Texas games, the Houston National Senior Olympics, they were actually in separate age groups. So I got this really energetic and excited call from Earl about a year ago, and he says, "Keith, I got great news. I won 10 gold medals." And I'm like, 10 gold medals at the Texas State Games? And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. But then I said, well, where was Adolf? Was he ill? Did he not make it? I just talked to him. He said he was coming. And he was like, well, yeah, what happened was my birthday was last week. So I was 90 and he was still 89. So we were in different age groups, so I got the gold. But I just talked to him about a month and a half ago after Cleveland, and they were in the same age group again. So Earl had to settle for silver. But he had already done some quick math, and he said by the 2015 games, which are in Minneapolis, he said by Minneapolis, we will be in different age groups again by just 2 weeks. So I'm going to get gold again. And that's something I love, because here's Earl, over 90 years old, and he's talking about what he's going to be doing in 2 years. And it's that goal that I keep coming back to. And he says, I'm gonna book my hotel. So I got a bad hotel in Cleveland because I booked too last minute. So I'm gonna book a hotel a year early, and I'm gonna rent a car, and I'm gonna drive with my family, and this is what we're gonna do. And it's great. He's making plans for when he's 93 years old, and I think that's wonderful. And one other thing about that sort of idea of looking forward, John recently renewed his driver's license. He's 94, soon to be 95. Actually, I think he's 95 now. I think he just had his birthday. And he said he was at the DMV renewing his driver's license. And he does the little paperwork, and he goes in. And by the way, he's an excellent driver. I've driven around with him before on numerous occasions, and very, very impressed. He's not slow, but he's not out of control. And I'm like, man, I got to take notes. He's good. But he's at the DMV renewing his driver's license, and he fills out the paperwork, and it's an 8-year renewal. So he'll be 102 when he has to renew his, and he's talking about that. He's like, yeah, I'll be 102 and I have to renew my driver's license. I got to just make sure that my eyesight stays up, because that's the challenge, he said, is passing the eye test. So what's funny about that, though, is he's filling out the paperwork, and he said the woman at the counter was like much younger. You know, she's probably in her 20s, and it fills it out: first name, last name, birth year, and it says 19. And you know, you write 19 in my case, 84, and so it'd be 19, and you just put 84. And so what he wrote was just 19, because he was born in 1919. So he goes to the counter and he hands her the thing, and she's looking at it. She's like, well, what year are you born? It just says 19. 19 what? And he's like, no, 1919. And she's like, ooh, we got to do another eye check on you, Mr. Tatum. He passed, though. He passed. So one thing that people always, I think, you know, a lot of the screenings that we've done have been at senior living communities. And a lot of times there will be, you know, different CCRCs, there will be continuing care retirement communities, there will be people who are perhaps not as active, but could be more active, and they're perhaps, you know, physically capable. And what's funny is a lot of people say, well, how old these people, Adolf and the Tigerettes and Earl, these people must have been athletes their whole lives. You know, I can't do that. They must have good genes, and they've been competing their entire lives. And you know, what's interesting is I assumed that too when we got started with the project. But what's interesting about senior athletes is probably about half of the characters in the film and about half of the senior athletes we met along the way are actually had picked up their sport in their retirement years. Now, Earl is a great example. Earl is, he was 86, actually he was 84 when he first started competing in track and field. And he started competing, as you saw in the movie, because his wife of 64 years had passed away. And his daughter was concerned that he was becoming more isolated and really not engaging with people. And she wanted him to meet more people and really pick up a hobby that might distract him from his sorrow. And so he decides to pick up the senior games. And so he had never touched a shot put or a javelin or a hammer, that really crazy chain with the ball on it. And he had never touched one of these until he was in his 80s. And he never expected to do this. And now it's, as he said at the end of the movie, it's what keeps him alive. It's what keeps him looking forward to things and keeps him healthy, both physically and mentally. And so I find that really indicative of these people's attitudes, but also the fact that you don't have to have been an athlete your entire life to be active at whatever age you're in. We understand that there's a lot of inertia, and it's difficult to maybe start if you haven't been active for a while, but there are a lot of people who take that step. The one thing I want to say about Earl, though, too, is we did poke a little fun with Earl. He had a great sense of humor. And we would say, Earl, you know you are old when your daughter is your daughter is also competing in the Senior Olympics. His daughter is a champion archer in the North Carolina Senior Olympics, and so she's in her, I think, early 60s now, and but she's the one who introduced him because she herself was a competitor. But you know, Mavis is another really good example of someone who was active when she was young. She played basketball as a high schooler. She was part of a team that was one of the best in the state of Louisiana, and she competed at a high level. But she, being in her mid-70s, when she was in high school and had graduated and decided to go to college, there was no Title IX reform. There were no basketball teams for the universities in her state. There are no women's basketball teams. So she had no opportunity to continue to play. And so she didn't think much of it. She ended up getting married and having children and grandchildren and a successful business and a large family. And she didn't play basketball once. She says she didn't touch a basketball from when she turned 18 until she turned 62. And when she turned 62, she heard about the Senior Olympics. And she put together a team, and she started playing again. And she said, as you saw in the film, that's when her life changed again. And she felt like she was opening a new chapter. And she had these new things, and these new people, and these new relationships to look forward to every day. And it was, you know, her eyes just light up when she talks about her team and the competitions, let alone she gets to travel around the country and see new places. And so it's really, you know, she is someone that I think is indicative of people that maybe were active, but maybe lost it because they're busy with the challenges of life. There was one other story that illustrates that just as well. It's a really charming story that we actually filmed but couldn't include in the movie. We had filmed 120 hours of footage across the country, different stories, and what you just watched was about 54 minutes. So you've heard about the cutting room floor when making a movie. Well, the cutting room floor was pretty cluttered. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on the cutting room floor. One story that we did not include in the movie was a married couple. They're from Iowa City. They had met playing table tennis in their teens, and they fell in love in high school playing table tennis. Leah, the wife, she would always brag about how much better she was than Gerald, and so they had this really cute thing, kind of an Adolf and Earl rivalry. But they had met as teenagers, got married, same story as Mavis, stopped playing, stopped competing, stopped being active, raised their family. Gerald actually started a church and was very busy, doing that, and then, Leah's very busy raising the family. And as they retired when they were in their late 60s, the doctor started saying, guys, your blood pressure's getting high, your cholesterol's getting high, you're overweight, you need to get active, you need to be more active. And they really disliked a lot of the things. They picked up bike riding, they picked up walking and power walking, they didn't like any of that. And somehow they remembered how they met, and they started playing table tennis together. And then they became obsessed with table tennis. They remodeled their home so they could fit their table tennis. They made the ceiling taller so they could fit the table tennis table in their living room. So when you walk in their front door, it's right there. They hired this personal coach, this really tough German woman who's a champion table tennis player. And it reinvigorated them. They lost weight. It strengthened their marriage, they tell us. And we filmed with them as they were competing in mixed doubles in California and celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary at the games. They had met, 50 years earlier playing table tennis, and they were playing it again after about a 40-year hiatus. And so, those kinds of stories really inspired me and really kind of helped me try to share that message that no matter your age, no matter your activity level, there are things that we can do that are better. And our body is very much connected to our mind. And I cannot tell you how sharp Roger and John and Adolf's minds were. The stories that they would tell, the conversations we'd have about contemporary politics and very complex issues. And it's man, I had no idea. I had no idea, but now I do. And now I'm really this convert for active aging. And it really kind of, I think before making the movie, I had this idea that when I was 65 or 68 or however old, that I was going to be in the rocking chair and I was going to pick up crossword puzzles. I hate them now, but maybe I'd like them along the way. And then there would be different things that would happen I would become that older person. But now, seeing Adolf and seeing Earl and seeing the Tigerettes and what they've been able to do, it really inspires me, and I hope it's inspired all of you that we can all do a little bit more and age actively and encourage others to age actively. I mean, that's probably the most rewarding part of our film and doing the screening tour is being able to share it and see the impact that it's having. I was really excited to hear about the Senior Olympic competition that's being held through Phoebe Ministries and the communities that you operate. And I know we're going to have a speaker who's going to talk about some of the competitions. And there's even a sport I'd never even heard of that was, what was it called again? Quates? Quates, that's right. Does everyone here knows what quates is? Is that just me? Jeez. Man, we're isolated out in California. I'm sorry. I got to do more research. But quates. I'm gonna. You and I, let's go afterwards. Quates. But thanks so much for having me, and it's really exciting to see the impact that it's having. And I hope that you'll continue the impact and encourage others to age actively. Thanks again for watching the film. Again, questions after there's going to be a 15-minute break. We're going to do a Q&A afterwards, so please bring them. And the last thing I wanted to mention is Trina reminded me that there are DVDs and t-shirts that Phoebe Ministries is going to be selling, and of Age of Champions and Age of Champions Winning Never Gets Old t-shirts, so feel free to pick those up. But thanks again, really appreciate it, and we'll talk in a little bit.